edition of the Saints Coaches Corner. I'm Aaron Todd. Joining me today is head men's cross country and track and field coach, John Newman. Thanks for joining me today, Coach Newman.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. Pleasure to be a part of one of the coaches' corners this week.
Well, this year marks the 50th anniversary of the revival of the St. Lawrence men's cross country program. We had a team back in the late 1920s and through, I think, most of the 1930s. But it disappeared for a while. We came back in full force in 1970, and we've never looked back. It's been a great program for us. We've got a rich tradition in history. Coach Newman, you joined the team as a student athlete in 1990. You've been part of the program for 30 years yourself. What does it mean to the program to have this milestone? And on a personal level, what does it mean to you to have such a long history with this program?
Yeah, first of all, I think when you think about 50 years, and then I go back to when I started at St. Lawrence, who would have thought that I would have been a part of, more than half of that time, so to speak. So I'm honored for that, to be able to be, both a student athlete back in the day, but then to coach throughout the years at different various levels with our program, and then ultimately the head coach in recent years. Honestly, coming into the program as a freshman, I knew very little about St. Lawrence cross country, almost nothing. It wasn't something we heard about a ton growing up, even being from Canton. So it was like kind of thrown to the fire almost the first season that I was on campus and knew I was going to try to run cross country. Did a lot of research, kind of try to figure out what this program was all about, and that stuck with me, and realized that there was even at that time there was still a pretty good tradition and history started, and I just wanted to be a part of it. And by the time I graduated, I wanted to continue to be a part of it and do all I could to perpetuate our success and just the traditions and histories that we've had over the years.
Well, as you said, a lot of tradition and history, but certainly the team in its history has never faced a season quite like this one with the COVID-19 pandemic, some early restrictions on practices in terms of group numbers, group size, and all those types of things. Fall season where competitions have been canceled. How has the team coped with those challenges, and what have you seen from the group in terms of resiliency as they've coped with what's been dealt to them?
Yeah, I've been our coaches have been super impressed with our group so far. It's almost miraculous how resilient they are and how they've just pretty much gone with everything that's been thrown at them in recent weeks, months, and going into the summer with such unknown. I think there was great hope at the start of the summer that we would be competing this fall. Looking forward to that, obviously, and trading accordingly. And as the summer went on, it seemed to be less and less likely that might actually happen. But we kind of changed our mindsets a little bit. I think our athletes did a great job in terms of kind of almost recalibrating where they were directing themselves from day to day, finding different motivation to continue to train hard and move forward. But I think, one of the things that's been almost essential in terms of that process is that our group is determined to perpetuate our traditions to the best they can throughout this time, and also to help make this year a step towards hopefully a competitive 2021. Knowing we had some big turnover last year, I think we're without our first 5 runners from last year's team from NCAAs right now. So that's a big loss in terms of front runners, but pretty much our whole next group is on board. It's predominantly our sophomore class right now. They've taken it right by the reins and have done everything they can to continue to move the program forward, welcome the freshmen to the team, along with our upper class leaders too. So we have some seniors that have been around enough where they've had the opportunity to see our program over a number of years and make sure that we keep doing the right things and leaving it better than they found it. Is kind of like our long-standing motto with our program, and I think they really take that to heart. And it's been pretty cool process to see them take such great responsibility for just that. It hasn't taken a lot of prompting from the coaching staff. The initiative from this group, from whether it's our first years to our seniors or the larger sophomore class, they've been making the initiative and carrying that forward almost on their own organically.
And I know, obviously, as you mentioned, no competitions this year, no races, but I know you did have at least one time trial out on the Ronald C. Hoffman cross country course. Can you talk about that day? It was a gorgeous day. I know the day that it happened is, one of those great fall days on campus. The weather was just perfect for racing. So hopefully your guys didn't have any excuses when they came across the finish line.
Yeah, we've like I said, we've kind of recalibrated and kind of rebranded what we were trying to do for this year. And, with some conversation with the team, we decided we were going to pick some highlight opportunities that we were going to focus on, and we call them our big effort days. So we kind of strategically placed them throughout the season so that we would have something to shoot for, still something to train for day in and day out, and also something to look forward to. Our last event would be happening, hopefully, all things go smoothly, on I think it's November 20th, which would have been the day before NCAs. So that'll be our last, our big effort that we had planned. But we started out, we did our traditional, what we would do the first part of the cross country season is a 4K time trial. We either go the first half of the Hoffman cross country course or the second half, depending on the year. We alternate that. This year we had what we call the back half. So we started there. And we were really impressed with just the caliber of the team coming in, with such uncertainty throughout the late summer and early fall, and a late start for us. But I think the cool metric that we took away from that is that our last place runner finisher in that particular day was faster than our average time from a year ago. And last year was obviously almost a fairy tale season for us. We had so many bumps along the way, but we knew it was going to be a steady, long process. And it all came together at the very end last year, ultimately, penultimately really hosting the regional on maybe one of the worst conditions ever. We pulled that off, from a university and a hosting perspective, but our athletes really stepped up and got the job done that day too. So it kind of capped a great end of the season to get another week and send those guys to NCAs, where we far surpassed our ranking at the time and finished 15th and had 2 All-Americans and just a top to bottom outstanding for team performance at that championship. So, all of that being said, last year, kind of that fairy tale situation. This year, it's obviously a lot different. And, but we're really proud that we, started out the season and we could, have some comparisons to last year's team. We also did run a full 8K on the Hoff. I think that was maybe 2 weeks ago now, 2 or 3 weeks ago. That went a little less impressively, but again, there was some really good takeaways from that. In that, one of the things that from a program, our caliber program, one of the things that I always strive for is by the end of the season that we have all our guys able to break 30 minutes for a collegiate 8K, whether that's, their last race of the year or somewhere along the way. That's kind of the hope, kind of the reference point that we shoot for. It doesn't always happen. Usually, we're 95% there with our team because we have large teams. This year I was a little bit more worried about how that would shake out because we have a lot smaller group this season. But, it worked out, and that was a little bit earlier than normal when we did that. So we ended up having all our guys get under 30, and that was a nice landmark to kind of take away from that particular time trial. I think our top performances weren't certainly what would compare to some of the top performances last year, but in general, it was a really good performance and a great way to assess kind of where the team was at for a full 8K cross country distance.
You mentioned, working with the team to figure out, what your priorities were going to be, coming up with the idea of big effort days. As a coach, this is just a really different experience. Normally you're looking at the calendar and saying, all right, this is when the championship portion of our season is, we're going to build to that. And you don't have that this year. How much of a collaborative process has it been for you to work with your student athletes to kind of figure out their priorities? Because there's no carrot anymore, right? There's no race to run for, and you want the guys to stay motivated. You want them to be involved in the process. How do you manage that process?
Yeah, I think that was one of the first things that even before we got on campus, I was concerned about, like, what is going to be the vibe of the team? What are they going to want to get out of this year? Whether we get to compete in a couple small, local races with some neighboring schools, or in the event that we don't, what is it they're going to want to get out of this season? And, we kind of started chatting about that right away and trying to figure out those big effort events that we wanted to kind of focus on and use those as our, kind of benchmarks along the way. So it's been really collaborative, and I thought maybe we'd have to revisit it as the season semester went on. But everybody seems to still be really focused on what's right in front of them, but also, they still are looking towards our last couple of events that we have planned. So, like I said, I can't be more proud of this group and just how resilient they are and how focused they are on wanting to continue to move forward every day and put in the work and, try to elevate the team one more step before, next year or spring, whether it's track season, or next year for fall cross country. But yeah, it's been a real collaborative process because, certainly we're concerned about just how everybody's doing, handling the situation of so much different on campus. And we don't want to put too much stress on them in terms of things that, they can't really control that much. So I wanted it to be a really open process in terms of figuring that out. And if they had said, oh, we just want to practice one day a week, we would have figured that out and we would have done something along those lines. But that wasn't the case. They definitely want to work hard and keep putting in time. I think they're also just so glad to be back together and being able to run with their teammates and do some of the things that they can do outside of practice still. Our family groups are, they've been pretty tight throughout, and also work collaboratively amongst the family groups on the team so that they could do some stuff outside of practice. And I know they've been taking one of the things that I thought was a really good opportunity that the guys decided to take advantage of was, all right, so if we're not going to practice on Saturday and Sundays, and we got maybe a little bit extra time that way, we don't have meets obviously, let's try to knock out some of these traditional long run routes that haven't been done in a long time, or we've heard of but nobody's done in recent years. So they've actually done a lot of work exploring, finding backcountry roads, trails, old railroad beds, things like that provide great running experience, but maybe aren't super accessible if you're limited on time. So they've been able to, get just a little bit off campus and take advantage of the surroundings, which is obviously a great asset to our program normally, but whether we can take full advantage of it on a given year is not always that easy. So.
Well, that's, a nice way to connect to the 50-year history of the program, right? I mean, as we, there are certainly some old, a lot of running shoes have been worn out in the North Country by St. Lawrence cross country runners, all through the country roads. So I'd love to hear that they've been exploring. That's great. Last question I'll ask, you referenced this a little bit earlier, whether they're, working towards next cross country season or hopefully the track season. Can you talk about what your plans are for your student athletes who are not members of the cross country team and that are on the track team, and when you're hoping to start getting practices together for them, and what your hopes are for that season? Yeah,
I mean, we're fortunate. We're going to be able to start our small group practices on Monday, so right after this weekend. So we're excited about that. I know the team that's on campus right now is excited to get to work, start doing track and field, either conditioning, but I mean, ultimately they want to do specific event work and things like that. But we'll get there eventually, hopefully. But yeah, we're excited about that. Just being able to have some mass time, I'm calling it, with our student athletes in person at least. So yeah, we're preparing. We're trying to figure out some of the logistics with that. But we're excited to get going with that process. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to carry through next semester. As we've got the 3-semester situation And that's created quite a few challenges in terms of like who's on campus right now, and also who will be on campus in the traditional spring semester. So we're going to be quite limited in both categories right now, just because of a larger sophomore junior class with the track and field team right now. So there, quite a few aren't here right in the fall, and then quite a few won't be with us for the spring. So we've got some work to overcome that. But we're going to do probably a similar process to what we've done with cross country in terms of trying to create the best opportunities we can, create some excitement, keep it fun, and also as competitive as we can. And hopefully we're going to be able to see some meets when we get into the second semester.
Well, I certainly hope that for you as well, Coach Newman. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today. And I want to thank all of our audience for tuning in to another edition of the Saints Coaches Show.
Thanks, Aaron.